Start the CAC meeting, if that's okay. First, we'll start with apologies and leave of absence. We don't actually have one from Alderman Sexton, so move on to point number 1, co-option of a committee member in the event of a vacancy.
Move that we co-opt, Lord Mayor.
Yes, thank you very much.
Better keep that open.
Very good. Let's move on to point number 2, indications of pecuniary and conflicts of interest. Are there any? Being none, we'll move on to number 3, transfer of agenda items. Of course, we only have one, so I'll move on to number 4, the report 4.1, safe space utilisation of Youth Art for Night program. And just before we begin, as you may know, the media has requested permission to take photographs during this committee meeting, so I just want to confirm that there are no objections.
Just to clarify, is this photographs in general or photographs with regard to this item? Like angry faces or happy faces?
I think it's with regards to this particular item. To my understanding, that's what.
Can I put some makeup on first, please? I'm only joking.
It's still not film.
No, just photographs. Yes, that's what we've been told. So I just confirm there are no objections?
No.
No, very good, thank you very much. We'll move on to 4.1, and the way that I will handle this is to have the deputation first, please, and then we'll have Kimbra and Ms Parker actually give a brief introduction. So if we could please call in.
Happy to move that we have deputation.
Thank you very much. Any dissent? No? Thank you. Mr Stubley, did you want to come forward?
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm John Stubley, CEO of Hobart City Mission. I have with me Ewan Higgs, who is the Program Manager who oversees the Safe Space Program. I'm aware there may be some questions come up that warrant his hands-on experience with the client cohort. So I'll start with some broad statistics of the program. Since we've been open 439 nights. We've supplied over 6,400 beds out of a total possible number of bed nights of 8,780. So that's about a 73% capacity. We have on average 17 to 20 people staying at the site per night. Bookings are normally 100% full, and then there's a few no-shows, so we have a few vacancies as it turns out each night. Through the program, we've assisted a total of 273 different individuals, and 46% of those to this point have moved on to some form of permanent housing. Now that's a fairly significant point. When the program was commenced, it was a night program, and it first and foremost was to provide somewhere for rough sleepers to have somewhere to sleep at night where it was safe and dry, with some food provided. We very quickly turned it into a program that was focused on connecting those participants with the support services they needed to move on, if you like, to move back into the support system. So on the site at the moment, we have coming in on a weekly basis Housing Connect, alcohol and drugs, other drug services, mental health, Orange Sky Laundry, community legal services. We're working on getting Centrelink to come to the site. We've had a hairdresser. I'm not sure if we currently do or not, and I know we're looking for a podiatrist. So a lot of these people have fallen out of the support system, and they're not going to come back to the support system without a program like this to help bring them back into that support system. Initially, they build connections with the staff, who then encourage them to work with these other services to work on their other underlying issues. We are seeing some move through fairly quickly. Some of the longer term, dare we call them harder core clients, are also starting to engage with staff, and we're starting to see positive outcomes. So it's not just a program that goes nowhere, it is actually moving people forward. We initially had conversations with Council in about July about having to find a new site when Youth Arc was reopening in September. We have been quite genuinely looking for a more appropriate site since July for both the day and the night program. We've had a number of close calls with a space for the night program. The most recent one was the site was perfectly appropriate for the program in itself. The problem we had is that it was near a motel, and it had residences next door. And we're well aware that in the interests of this program being seen to fit in with the community rather than to cause problems with the community, we're very keen to make sure the location of the site fits well with its surrounds. To that end, the Youth Arc site does work quite well for us. I know there are a number of neighbours close by, and I know there are a number of concerns that I gather you are aware of from those neighbours. I would contend there's probably few other sites in the city that are going to have less problems with neighbours in the direct vicinity. There aren't retail businesses per se near the doorstep. I think Budgie Smugglers is closed at the moment. There's a multi-storey car park, a hotel which I understand is closing its doors earlier of an evening, but it can close its doors and still trade. I guess what we've done over the course of the last 15 months is we've taken people who have been sleeping on the doorsteps of businesses all over Hobart and we've brought them to one location. We've given them somewhere to be in the day and during the night. We've given them the dignity and respect that any human being deserves. We've given them food and we're working with them, as I said, to reconnect in with the support systems that we are making available to them. We've worked closely with council staff and Youth Arc staff to try and minimise the problems and challenges with the site, and we understand that it is not an ideal relationship to have a youth program sharing a site with a group of homeless people, though there is a few hours of separation between those programs, if not more, being open at the different times of the day. We understand there is wear and tear on the Youth Arc equipment by having our cohort in there of an evening, and we understand it may result in some of the people hanging around the site a bit more during the day, though we have worked with Youth Arc to have our staff come down and ask people to move on where they have been there and may have been perceived to be causing problems for the Youth Arc program. I guess fundamentally, the story of a homeless person is a story of trauma. It's usually trauma that commences in their teens. There's usually multiple episodes of trauma into their adulthood that results in mental health issues, breakdown in social networks, breakdown in family support networks, and ultimately they turn to drugs and alcohol to dull the pain of a stuffed up life. They've been let down by the system in that the mental health services weren't there at the outset to help them at that time when they needed that support. And I believe we as a community have an obligation to now provide them the support to reconnect them with the services and bring them back into the service delivery framework to help them reconnect and move on. We are still looking strongly for a site for the program. We're actually looking at a site at 6 o'clock tonight that has quite good potential. So this isn't just a stalling tactic to continue at the Youth Arc site indefinitely. We are keen to move on. We sympathise completely with the concerns you have. One of the challenges we have is our state government funding at the moment is only until June next year. One of the problems we have already encountered with one site is the challenge of trying to lease premises for less than 18 months when most landlords are going to want a lease term of 3 to 5 years. That's probably all I need to say at this stage, so happy to take questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Stubley. I'll open up the discussion if anybody has some questions. Yes, Councillor Harvey.
I'm interested in the funding you've received so far, and how much have you received, and when does it run out?
So the funding runs out in June 2022. The annualised funding we're currently receiving for the day and the night program is about $1.7 million for the Hobart Safe Space program.
Per year?
Per year. And that is probably over 80% going to wages. So you've got 2 staff on pretty much around the clock. So you've got night rates, weekend rates and so on. So I think when you do the maths, it works out to something like 8 or 9 full-time equivalent staff.
I'm sorry, next was Alderman Baracus.
Thank you, Chair, and through you. Look, I think this is a bit of a tough one. I think most people would agree that whatever decision gets made, we wouldn't want to have a gap in service in services. When you're saying that, we're looking for another site, and there are some things you've been looking at, are you yet to identify a site, or you've gotten a site that you may have identified but you haven't been able to secure it yet? Just as far as the timeline of us, if we're going to give Grant an extension, are we going to be looking at another extension next time around, or is this something that we actually have a ending on the horizon?
It is our intention completely. There is an ending on the horizon. We've had a few sites that we've come very close to in the last few months. So the one that I was referring to, that the site worked at the location close to a hotel and neighbours, was one that we only walked away from about 3 weeks ago. The one we're looking at tonight, I think, has quite a bit of potential, but Ewan's already seen it. I haven't. We're going to have a look tonight. We'll probably be a bit clearer then. We may decide that one doesn't quite work, though proximity to neighbours and the style of neighbours, I would suggest, isn't as problematic as other sites have been. So there is hope there, but the right site could turn up tonight, tomorrow, or we could still be looking in a few months' time.
Supplementary, or a second question, sorry. In regards to the concerns that have been raised by neighbouring, such as the youth arc, such as other the hotel, there's also the people, nurses and doctors coming and going from the hospital. I've had concerns raised. I can't speak to anyone else here, but some of the local businesses having workers getting harassed and stuff by certain people. Is there mitigation steps that have been taken to address that, or what mitigation steps that are yet to be taken, that could be taken to because we all want to provide as much support services to the people that need it, but at the same time we do have another duty of care as well. So I'm just trying to balance that out and trying to get a better understanding there.
So I'll answer that one. So I've had some regular meetings with some of the local businesses and the owners of the car park to try and identify the individuals that kind of cause the ongoing problems, and then we try and address that. All we have though in order to address that is to be able to have a conversation with someone and say, potentially you can't stay here tonight if you're going to keep impacting on the community. We tend to find a lot of the people that are impacting potentially aren't even our clients. They're just hangers on. I'm trying to work with police because again, that's another avenue we have. The Salems will email me and text message me through photographs when they can get the CCTV, and we act on that. So we're doing as much as we can, I guess.
And is having the location so close to the middle of the CBD potentially exaggerating that effect as well, do you think? Or
look, it's a difficult one. We're dealing with a cohort who are on foot. All the services they need to access, whether it's mental health, pharmacies, GPs, Centrelink, they're all in the CBD. So we have looked at moving further afield, but then we have the issue of how do we get people there and back.
And of course the challenge is once you move out of the CBD, suddenly you're into residential areas. And I suggest that the challenges of disillusioned residences is probably going to be more challenging than businesses around the city.
Yes, so we'll go Councillor Burnett, Alderman Thomas, and then Councillor Ewan, and then Alderman Zuko, and then Alderman Briscoe, and then the Lord Mayor, please.
Thanks, Chair. And I just firstly wanted to say thank you for the work that you've done, try to keep people housed overnight, and the work of the Safe Space with your team, Mr Higgs, as well. So just for clarification, and I know what the answer will be, so ideally you're looking for a 24/7 accommodation place for people rather than split over two sites?
It's a difficult one to answer, I guess, because what we've found is having two sites actually really works for the programme, really works for the cohort. So it would take a certain site to come up to enable us to run both programmes from, but it certainly is a consideration.
And supplementary, if I may, so in other cities, how does it usually work?
Interestingly, so the research that I've been doing, other cities don't have day programs that operate in the same way that we do. They predominantly have a night shelter that you stay in for one night. You get fed your breakfast and then kicked out the door in the morning. And you don't get back in unless you can make a referral and get booked in at about 7 o'clock at night. So we've worked really hard for the day program to do the hard work with the clients, to get them to re-engage.
And just, sorry, one last question, just in relation to the engagement with the state government, can you just explain how engaged the state government are in trying to find alternatives for you as well?
We've had conversations with them about properties they may have available, and they've also referred to us a few sites they became aware of that they thought might be appropriate. Coming back to the 2-day and night program running from the one premise, we were doing that for a while in Youth Arc while the Youth Arc program was closed down. The problem we had was that they pretty much moved their squad into the space, and when we were encouraging them to connect with services, they'd say, I don't need to, I've got everything I need here. And gradually they were accumulating more and more things. So by having a separate day and night program, we are quite deliberately keeping them unsettled with the deliberate intention of this not being the solution to the housing problem, but merely a transition point. So they do have to pack up each morning, they do have to move across town. As Ewan said, if we found the right site and we can see a way of making it work without it just becoming, again, their home, we'd certainly consider that. And I understand the location of the sites being closer together may alleviate some of those concerns. The site we're looking at is quite a bit closer, very close to where our day program is at the moment. So in that regard, it could work positively from the perspective of people traipsing through the city.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Alderman Thomas.
Yes, look, thanks, Chair. First of all, obviously there are many hundreds of solutions to homelessness, but and the different cities try different things, and of course this city is the only one that, as you know, wiped out the Common Ground initiative, which is growing strength to strength around the world. However, I want to commend your outcomes, strong outcomes and positive reinforcement by what you've done. I think it's really interesting because in a policy sense, it's not, I suspect, Chair, there's not one person around this table that wouldn't commend and say, you know, we think this is fantastic, and this is an issue of a clash of our needs and our priorities at the moment. There's a clear countervailing need here to provide a safe place for a productive outcome in terms of the Youth Arc. And I know there's certainly Councillor Harvey's been a strong advocate for that over many, many years. And the program until the flood and then through COVID was a highly successful program that just belted the lights out of so many standards and measurements. So it's actually been the poor cousin to this new initiative. In a way, it didn't ask for this to come, but the council willingly provided you the space. So I wouldn't want, for me personally, for you to go away thinking, oh, council doesn't like what we're doing. I think we are in awe and admiration of what you're doing. It's just a straight clash of need at the moment. The final thing I'd like to say is you mentioned the proximity to the city for chemists, etc. But does it have to be in Hobart as opposed to the northern suburbs? I mean, we know that people sleep rough all over the city, and we know that there are potentially a range of places available in Moona, other places. Not that we don't want it here, but you know, the amount of empty, vacant buildings at the moment, subject to planning approval, is legend, unfortunately.
We have started to spread our net further north, so we're looking at properties in Moona. We recently revisited a red building on the side of the Brooker, heading north, which we thought, being on a bus route, that could work. I gather other arrangements are in place. So we are accepting that if we can't be in the CBD, I don't know that we can be on city fringe because of the impact on residential areas. So we are starting to look into the Moona area with bus routes. This cohort's quite good at finding their way around if they need to.
Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much. I'm also mindful of the time as we need to start council at 5:30, so I will move on. Councillor Ewan.
It's okay, my question's actually already been asked by Helen. so-
Okay, thank you very much. Alderman Zuko.
John, you know my views about your what you guys do. I think it's fantastic, but we have an issue here which we've got to try and deal with. A question I want to ask you is, would you be willing to participate in a roundtable discussion with the police and the stakeholders that have got issues at the moment? That could be a way of trying to find some win-win situations.
We're keen, as Ewan alluded to. He's had conversations with organisations that have brought concerns to us. I suspect some of what's happened is the concerns have come to you and not to us, but we're more than happy to front those concerns front and centre and see what we can do to address it. That's always been our intention.
If the council facilitates that for you, you'll be willing. Okay, thank you. I'll wait until all questions are answered. I would like to sort of, if you wouldn't mind, I've got a couple of ideas I'd like to put forward. So,
thank you, Chair. Very quickly, I don't need to repeat. We all think you're doing a great job. With some very disadvantaged clients, I imagine. Just as a matter of interest, I know there's still people living on the Domain in tents and other places around the city, and I think even in Franklin Square, not Franklin Square, in St David's Park. From your statistics, is there a lessening of demand now that 46% of your clients have moved on, or do you think it's just a glass that's continually being filled up by people who need help?
Yeah, I wish I could say yes. Unfortunately, we're just seeing the demand is just as much as there has been, if not more. I think COVID has brought around more demand. We're seeing more people with less housing options. We just have to look at the crisis, and we're seeing more people impacted by that. So we're seeing there's 10 people on the wait list to come in tonight.
Yeah. Well, I noticed one of the recommendations of officers were very smart in giving us alternatives here. But the one that you're probably interested in is the option of 2, which is extension be granted to a suitable alternate facility be located or until the 30th of June. Now, if we grant it to the 30th of June, I can imagine the headlines in various media, we've kicked out people in the middle of winter. So if we did go along that line, is it possible just to have a month? Would that give you enough time? Because I think you did say, John, that it could be months away and doesn't give you the imperative. Now, I noticed in the report there is another alternative that caters for 10. Is that right, if I read that right?
Yeah, so that we currently run the day program out of the upstairs space in our Barrett Street building. Yep. So we've moved our staff out and turned that into the day space when we needed to find somewhere to keep that going. We, as a last desperate effort to keep the program open, we would run the night program from there, but we'd only be able to take 10 people because of the space. Regarding the time frame, the challenge we've got, I'm aware that any site we find, we're going to need council approval for a change of use, which is going to be a couple of months. I understand you don't want to give us an open-ended time frame, and we don't want that because we do want to move on. But whether there's an opportunity for ongoing review based on our progress may be a consideration.
And probably reduction in complaints and things that we receive or something like that. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we had the Lord Mayor and then Alderman Zuko. Well, maybe we should finish.
Well, look, can I just suggest, Lord Mayor, that we move into open council, and then just defer council for a moment to finish this off. So in other words, we've opened the council meeting, and then we just defer the council meeting, finish dealing with this, and go back into council. That's the best solution. That way, these people they can, remain here until we finish this matter.
So will I ask my question now or do that now? Defer now?
Well, let's get it deferred.
I'll do the deferral now.
Deferral now, yeah.
Now, so do that and then...
Someone on committees needs to defer this item first.
Thank you, Councillor.
And the Lord Mayor needs to open up the council meeting.
Any dissent?
You can do it from there,
Lord Mayor, you can do it from there. Yeah. Just open up the council meeting and then just...
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, I will open the council meeting.
Lord Mayor, can I just move a deferral of the council meeting, please?
Moved by Alderman Zuko, seconded by Alderman Briscoe. All those in favour of deferring the council meeting?
Suggesting adjournment?
Adjourning the council,
Adjournment,
adjourning the
okay.
council meeting. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against say no. Carried unanimously.
Okay, thank you. Someone now needs to go back and move to go back in the committee.
Open community.
Okay.
Thank you.
Oh, we're back on
Thank you very
track.
much, Councillor Ewan. Any dissent on that? No, thank you very much, and we'll move forward. Lord Mayor, thank you. You had a question.
Thanks, thanks, John. I guess just want to say good luck with your 6 o'clock meeting. I hope that it's successful. That would be a good one. The report talks about the rent that you'd start paying. Is that something that you're able to pay, that you think's a fair rental for the period until we would ask you to,
Yes,
until you're
yep.
ready to move on?
Yep, no, we can fund that.
Okay.
That's a requirement and we're comfortable with that.
Yeah, great. And also, just if we were to not agree to this tonight, where do you think everyone would go on the 31st of March? What would?
As I alluded to before, we would look to move the program upstairs into our office, and we'd have to reduce the number down to 10 a night. I'd suggest that we'd give that a go, and if we thought we could handle a few more, we would. But I can't see us probably getting beyond 12 people in the space we've got. The night time is a challenging time for this cohort. Quite often, some leave during the night because they can't handle being in a confined space overnight.
So, how many would that leave over to what you're doing at the moment?
So we have 20. Ewan indicated we're turning 10 away tonight. So, you know, if we're only taking 10 instead of 20, we're halving the number of spots available.
Okay. So there'd be 10 that might be elsewhere around the city, camped around the city. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, look, I was going to suggest a couple of things that someone from the committee, if they think it's a good idea or bad idea, to take it on board. I'd like, I don't want to see the program shut down because it really has delivered some good outcomes. I've actually worked with the program over winter and I know what they've been doing. And again, we're going to start it again in winter this year. I would like to see an urgent meeting with the police and stakeholders and these organisations as soon as possible. Well, I still believe we've got a little bit of time to look at, you know, by the 31st of March. So I'd like to, hopefully someone move that, so at least that's on the agenda. I don't want to sort of shut the gate right at this point in time on that site. There could be other solutions and alternatives that we could do to help alleviate some of the issues at night. Whether or not there's a street worker that might have to be funded or something like that. I'm not saying that we're going to do that. I'm just saying of possibly coming up with some solutions in the interim until such time you guys can find a suitable spot. Personally, hearing what you've said, and you're sort of knocking back 10 people, if you've got the other site down there, personally I think you should go ahead with that anyway, and that gives you 30 people a night. If you can manage that, that'd be great. And the other thing is I'd like to see if the council could possibly work with the state government, right, in endeavouring to go all out to try and assist this organisation to find a spot. Now, I'm only throwing these as potentials, but could there be potentially somewhere on the TCA ground that might be suitable? I don't know. I'm just plucking, right? The old Port Huon site. I don't know if that's what's been happening with that. Is that suitable? I don't know. Is there somewhere on the Cenotaph? Is it possible? Is that suitable? And the reasons why I'm saying that, because predominantly a lot of them through other sources that I've been advised are on the domain anyway and are camping there. And maybe if it's closer for them in those places, if we can find the spot, it might assist the program. But I think that needs the council to work with you guys and the state government. But I would hope that the first step would be to get this round table, police, stakeholders, you guys, a couple of our council officers, to at least look at if there's something we can do in the interim until such time you guys find that ultimate spot. So hopefully that someone on the committee has heard that. If you think it's a good idea, go for it. And as I said, if we can work with the state government and our council and you guys on potential sites that could work.
Thanks, Chair. What we're discussing tonight is the unsuitability of the co-location of the Safe Night Space and the Youth Arc facility. And my loyalty or my priority is to Youth Arts and Recreation Centre. That place has been operational for how long now? A couple of decades. And we've seen thousands of young people go through that facility, and now we're seeing their kids go through that facility. And these kids have come a long way, and this is how we prevent homelessness in the future, by having a great facility that keeps kids safe, that keeps them interacting with other people, that helps them with their social life, you know, their mental health. There's a whole range of services that we offer through Youth Arts and Recreation Centre that have been affected because of this co-location. And I don't want to see our Youth Arts and Recreation Centre be diminished or have any ongoing issues because of this association with the Safe Night Space. So my absolute desire here is to protect the youth of Hobart and make sure that their space is safe, that it's ongoing, and that they're not under any stress or pressure because of another program that is trying to operate from the facility. So I'm very comfortable moving the recommendation when the moment comes that we go with part one, due to the unsuitability of the co-location of the safe space overnight program at Youth Arc. The council refused the request from Hobart City Mission to extend their current licence beyond the 31st of March. There's the deadline. There's been deadlines that have come and gone already, but I think it's time that we put our young people first, and the security of them and the space that they have worked and that they use and have used for over 20 years in Hobart. It's a space that has a great reputation. It's a space we need to look after and protect, because that's where future generations of kids will be going to learn skills, to get the services that they need, and to help them, through life. So that for me is the priority here. And I understand what Alderman Zuko is saying with his suggestion for a round table. I don't know whether Hobart City Council should be running a round table, or whether or not we should be participating in something that's maybe organised by the state government, because at the end of the day, the state government need to step up and take responsibility for homelessness. We can play our part in it, and we have done, and the program has been reasonably successful to date, but it's come at the cost of Youth Arts and Recreation Centre. So I don't oppose a round table, but I don't know whether our staff, who are already under the pump, should be asked to organise a round table when there's other people that could potentially do that within state government agencies. So I'd much rather they organise it and we can be a part player in it, but not. I don't think we should be the keystone here that has to bring all the parties to the table. I think state government should be doing that. So at the appropriate time, I'm happy to move recommendation 1.
Thank you very much, Councillor.
I just wanted to, I wasn't sure whether we've still got our deputation, but because the deputy seemed to still be there, I was going to just ask them whether they had a response to the suggestions from Alderman Zuko, and I guess the suggestion that there's real damage being done to the youth of Hobart by the program. I just feel that you should have a right of reply, because that was quite a strong statement.
We have got a report here from the officers.
So would you be able to respond to those two things? And then I presume the deputation will need to finish at some point and we open the meeting or go back into, yeah.
You also need to hear from Acting Director.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I guess fundamentally I look at the issue of the challenges that we're confronted with around the city as not going away, whether we operate from Youth Arc or elsewhere. This cohort will move around the city during the day and do and always have. So I think we've got to be a little bit careful not to assume the continuation of the program at the Youth Arc site will or won't end the challenges of the businesses around the city. We might move the challenges somewhere else, so we might wear out some other people instead. When Alderman Zuko made the suggestion around having a round table, Ewan whispered to me, bring it on. So fundamentally, we're only too happy, as I said before, to work with anyone who has challenges to see what we can do to address it. And as Ewan said, we can't really control the behaviour of people around the city beyond identifying them, and then if we feel their behaviour is inappropriate and causing problems in the city, we can ban them, and we do regularly, from attending the program for a few nights. So they are back on the streets as a result.
But just also there was a suggestion that you could split your program, have 10 people somewhere and 10 people somewhere else. And I think there's a challenge, isn't there, because the money is, the
Yes.
staff have to basically be there, don't they?
Yeah, so we'd then need 2 people on shift at both sites, and you'd essentially be doubling the funding. That'd be another $850,000 a year, please.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Mr Stubley, sorry, before I do conclude the deputation, I had a few questions for you, if that's okay. Oh, and then Alderman Thomas. The 46% that you mentioned in the email of long-term housing, I was just wondering, is that the statistic for the Hobart site, or is that for the Burnie site? Could you just clarify that for me?
That's just from the Hobart site.
That's just from the Hobart site, okay. And how are you defining long-term housing?
Pretty much someone signed a lease.
Right.
Yep.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much. And so how have these statistics been verified and substantiated? Can we go and do you have something that you have a case management system? Or how does that work?
We pretty much put a spreadsheet together between myself and the staff, and then talked to clients, worked with other clients, worked with other services, because it was something we wanted to know. So we went out and sought that information. It's probably not readily available, but we put the effort in to reach out to other Housing Connect services, just so that we could see and clarify what was happening.
So just a spreadsheet, so you're not using the SHIP platform at all?
We do use SHIP. Again, it's not that we will get notifications, so we won't always know where someone's gone. Again, people do move into shared houses, and SHIP won't always reflect that. So yeah, again,
But your case notes would, correct? Within that
occasionally, but not always. So we actually found that when we made our own spreadsheet, the information we were getting was probably a little bit more up to date sometimes.
And sorry, so I did hear that 1.7 million per year. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
So was that 1.7 million for 3 different sites, or was that 18 million for 3 different sites, or
No,
what's?
it's 5.5 million for the 3 sites across the state each year, so the 1.7 is just Hobart.
And just one final thing, I suppose, is with regards to the evidence that you were talking about, that the separate or the co-location is better. I was just reading up some evidence about that as well, and just with regards to best practice, it was saying the Burnie site, for example, the 24-hour site, was actually had a lot, 46% actually was the long-term housing, people being housed. The rate was 46%, and that was because of that 24/7 model, and it was doing really well. So yeah, I was just kind of a little bit confused as to why the co-location was best, whereas there was other best practice that says that having it in one space. I was just wondering if you could, wanted to clarify.
Again, it's interesting. I'm not sure that you could say there is a best practice.
Right.
I think what we're identifying is that we're each trying a slightly different model, and from that we'll be able to ascertain what works.
Yeah.
For me, it comes down to the intent. The intent that I've taken on this program is to provide one safe night for someone in need when they most need it. Burnie operates on a slightly different model, and will offer up to, I think, a week at a time. So it's a different model with looking for slightly different outcomes.
Right, yeah, and and like everybody, I echo the same sentiments. I really applaud you on what you actually do. And I suppose, sorry, I did have one final question, just regards to the Morton Group and the services they provide. Are they still providing those services in your day facility?
My understanding is they are still providing services to our client cohort, but they're not coming to our site.
Right.
They're providing a telephone service. They've had a few challenges with a few clients who weren't happy with the service they got from Moreton, and that led to an environment where they felt they weren't safe at that site. So we are still doing our best to make sure those clients do have access to Moreton Group. They're not coming to the site to do that.
So that just when you outlined in that email that you sent, that wraparound service that's not actually coming to the site anymore for the day service, it's just a phone call, as you mentioned.
So the Moreton Group are actually only funded to provide a telephone service.
Right.
So when they came to site, that was actually off their own back and they were paying for that.
Thank you very much. Alderman Suko.
Yes, look, I'd like to sort of make some points. Further points.
Are we finishing the deputation?
Yeah, I don't need the deputation, thank
We
you.
also need to hear from the director, acting director.
Well, I've got the floor at the moment, so I'll speak, and then we can get to the director.
Sorry, Alderman Zuko, if that's okay, I'll just, for protocol's sake, I'll just say thank you very much for coming today. We do really appreciate you coming and giving a deputation. Thank you so much. And I will just hand over to the acting director just to say a few words before Alderman Zuko.
Okay, so a lot of what I've noted has been covered. However, it is agreed that the necessity for a safe space program, and in this report, the value of that program is not being questioned at all. You know, we totally agree as staff that everyone deserves a dry, safe space to sleep and access to food and services. The City of Hobart staff have always been strong supporters of this program since the very beginning and continue to work closely with Hobart City Mission, Salvation Army and the homelessness service providers. As detailed in the report, there are, however, strong concerns regarding the suitability of this program operating from a dedicated youth facility. The youth programs are steadily growing in numbers of young people accessing the space, both at open access, which we've had well over 1,000 people attend just in February, as well as we've developed many partnerships during the day with other service providers and organisations. The challenge is that young people and community members are being confronted by safe space participants, often highly intoxicated, swearing, yelling, openly taking drugs and being aggressive. There have also been strong concerns raised from tenants and adjacent businesses regarding the impact of the program on their operations. It is considered problematic that the day and night spaces are at either end of the city. This is resulting in the safe space participants congregating and creating concerns for the businesses in other parts of the city. Particularly at the moment, there's concerns in the Wellington Court area for many of the traders in that space. The lack of showers at either the night or day space is also considered a major contributor to why there's a lot of congregation around in that area. So, as noted in the recommendation, is the option of either continuing to extend the licence of City Mission until 30 June 2021 at the latest rental cost in line with the market valuation, or alternatively decline the request for an extension of the licence agreement past 31 March 2021.
Okay,
We'll just open the item. Any further discussion, Alderman Zuko?
Yeah, I just want to make a couple of points. Doesn't really matter whether we talk about homeless people or any person. In any group, you always find that there are some that are really bad. And the reality is, you get it. You know, and I'll put this exercise, and you get 20 footballers going on a footy trip. You're going to get 3, 4, or 5 of them causing more problems than others. So let's look at that reality, and that's a reality. I actually take a little exception about Youth Arc, as if I don't know what Youth Arc is, and I wish the former Deputy General Manager was here in Heather Salisbury, who would know how much work I put into Youth Arc in its infancy.
I do.
Okay, thank you. Also, back in the 1990s, 2000s, the amount of work I put forward in regards to dealing with the homeless problem of Hobart, I actually employed a lot of them during that time in my businesses to try and help, and was helping through programs. Most recently, because I'm in another position, I ran a program with a group of people to feed the homeless in winter, and part of that was the program that they're doing now. Yes, I understand we've got to take care of our young people. Of course we've got to think. But I believe that we all, irrespective of our political spectrum, we need to take care of people in general. And when there's a situation like this, I look at things and say, how can we find a solution to it, rather than saying, okay, yeah, they are a problem, let's throw them out. And I understand why I want to throw them out. I have rung a number of these people that are having problems, and I put to them, would you be prepared to be around, in a round table? And they all said to me, yes, let's do something to be around through a round table. Now, I'll add to the dimension and say, why don't we put it on to the minister as well, as part of what I said earlier, that we write to the minister urgently. We can do that overnight. If the minister would also, or the minister's officers would partake in that roundtable discussion with our officers. So we got the minister there. So I'm hearing what Councillor Harvey is saying. I believe that this is the first step to try and get these people, the minister's office and us, in a table. How can we do this? Now, maybe someone might put to the minister that, look, yes, the deadline's the 31st. Until such time they can find a thing, will you subsidise a street worker to assist us to work overnight? Because they are some of the things that we did in the 90s. And I remember I was the one that pushed for the street worker, and the general manager might vouch for that back in the 90s. And they were successful programs. So we could, if the state government might fund a street worker for a period of time until we find the appropriate spot for these people. Look, at the end of the day, I understand the youth arc, and as I said, I was, that was something I worked in my younger year. It's like the skate park in thing. These are all things that I partook in. I'm not throwing it away, and I just think we just need to just say, okay, yes, 31st is the deadline. Look, we could probably do wonders in a week if we sat down with the government and all the players. Let's just go for a little stage before we say no.
Chair, I'd like to move option 2 because the reason I think option 2 is a reasonable option is that this is a reasonable request that the Hobart City Mission are putting to us. They're not saying they want to stay. They're not saying they want to be an ongoing clash with the Youth Arc program. They're saying they want to leave, but they're also being very honest that they've got, challenges in the private rental market to find a suitable space. So if they had come to us and said, we think we should continue, we think, we can coexist, will you extend it because we'll coexist off until, for the next couple of years, then I'd understand Councillor Harvey's concerns. But I think what we have in front of us is a very practical solution. We can say, look, you've got to keep looking, we'll help you keep looking, but practically we don't want to be throwing a very successful program and people who will otherwise just end up in our doorsteps, doorsteps of businesses around the city, in the mall, in our parks, if we don't continue to be an active player in assisting. Now, I'm hoping that they get their lease tonight. That would be perfect. But if they don't, I just don't think it's reasonable for this council to be so narrow-minded as to say, no, we will not let you stay beyond 31 March. I think we have to say, look, we understand. We'll keep putting up with it for a bit. We want some rent to pay for some of the wear and tear, but we will keep putting up with it for a bit, because I just also want people to remember that the Youth Arc service is open for 12 hours a week. It's open from 3:30, I think, till 6 p.m, or 3 till 6 p.m, 4 days a week. So this is not something that's operating all of the hours. There is a gap between when it closes and when the other space opens, and obviously when it's there in the morning. We know it's not the long-term option. We know it has to end. But for this council to basically be the organisation that says, no, 31 March is it, and those people have nowhere to go, I think would be seen very poorly by the state government, by the community, by by the Hobart residents. So I think option 2 is the reasonable response to a reasonable request, and that is pay us rent. You do have to leave, but we won't, just close the door, and arbitrarily close the door because we're not, we're
Point
not
of order.
sure.
I think that's a misrepresentation of the officer's report. It's not an arbitrary date. It was the contracted date, and we've also extended this program. So I think we need to be factual about how we've got to this particular date.
Not a point of order.
I know, it's a point of clarification.
Point of clarification. Thank you.
Who's in the chair?
Councillor Harvey.
Yeah.
Well, hang on. Sorry, I suggested I would move the first one at the appropriate moment. So
So I'll leave it for now to move something because other people have a few things to say. Alderman Thomas had something to say before I do accept a motion. Alderman Thomas, did you want to add anything?
I do. But we're a council that does take into account the community and the community needs. We have a clash, as we said at the briefing. It's a very strong clash, and I think that Youth Arc has been extremely accommodating to this program. It is probably, without doubt, a very well-funded program that is being offered by City Mission and the Salvation Army. Very good program, but at $1.7 million, they have been on notice for an awful long time. But look, you know me from years around this table. I'm going to, if there is support around this table, I would like to change. On a foreshadow, change option 2 to move from June the 30th to May the 31st. And I'll do that for 2 reasons. One, it does stop the problem that the Lord Mayor wisely says, that the public gets the headline in the paper with a photograph tomorrow of the alderman threw these people out, the councillors that threw these people out in the street. But it also really does accommodate the need for planning approval wherever they go, and the fact they're going to have to negotiate with potentially parties that don't want them to move to a new premise. So I think May the 31st is a little bit more of a wake-up call for them that this is serious business this time, and it's another 2 months. I think that's adequate time, and 3 months is too long. So I'll be foreshadowing that if I get the opportunity. Pardon?
Include the round table option.
Oh yeah, the round table option is great.
Round table option?
Yeah, absolutely.
And the Minister's office?
Thank you, Chair. Having heard the points made by different people, I'm inclined to go along with the suggestion that has just been mooted. I think we've got to be careful, what we do with this. I'm quite happy to go along with the recommendation 1, but I think they will have ramifications and consequences. So therefore, I am inclined to go with 2 and also take up the suggestion that we change the June to May. And if, as a committee member, I'm quite happy to move that, and also, if no one has foreshadowed the amendment, I could also include that an urgent roundtable meeting be organised with the police and different stakeholders and the government.
Thank you, Councillor. Alderman Baracus, did you have something to say?
Thank you, Chair. Look, I think, as Councillor Dutta said, I think any decision we make tonight's going to have consequences. I think everybody agrees that the safe space has been an inarguably good thing, and delivered on the services that it was meant to deliver on. And at the same time, I think everybody seems to agree on the unsuitability of the co-location going forward. I'm not sure I'm not sure if it's appropriate or if it's the best way for us to be going about prioritising one group of vulnerable Hobartians against another group of vulnerable Hobartians. I think we acknowledge that Youth Arc needs to be preserved and needs to be protected, and hence why we all agree that the co-location is not appropriate. But sort of going forward, I think the right thing to do would be, look, we need to have a light at the end of the tunnel. There needs to be a cut-off date. We can't just keep perpetually extending and extending and extending and extending. But at the same time, I think we owe it to not so much to any of the organisations, but we owe it to the people that are receiving those services to try and put to try and ensure that whatever decision we make doesn't result in a gap in services. So we all agree that the co-location is unsuitable. I think if we give enough time for them to find a suitable location, but as well organise this roundtable, have the discussions with stakeholders, with the police, with people that are being affected by what's going on at the moment, as well as the state government, who, you know, given that I think they're the majority funder of the safe space. So I think it's to the point of, you know, what are they doing? You know, they are I think $16 million of funding for safe spaces. I think they're definitely a relevant stakeholder. But I think we need to ensure that whatever decision we make isn't coming at the detriment of the people that are actually benefiting from their services. So I think June's probably too far in my view. I think that's kind of just kicking the can down the road again. But I think we need to give them time to find a location to ensure that we don't have a gap in services. Otherwise, not only will it be a disaster for the council, I think it's more importantly it's going to come at the expense of people that need these services. So I'd be supporting what was suggested by Alderman Thomas. I think that's the reasonable compromise, I think, between the two sort of arguments going here, and hopefully will ensure that we don't have a gap in service.
Thank you very much. Councillor Ewan.
There's so much I want to say, but I'm going to be try and be mindful of time. I guess there've been a lot of... I think we're all really passionate about this issue, and none of us want to sort of seem to be kicking out for homeless people. However, as Councillor Harvey said, this is an issue of the co-location problem, and I think we're all in agreement there as well. I'm quite comfortable with the middle ground amendment. I think that's a more appropriate sort of time frame. Then it's not going to be the middle of winter, and it's not like 2 weeks away, as is the other option. I think another thing to be mindful of is that we have extended and extended and extended. This was only ever supposed to be a 6-month trial to show the state government that this service is needed and necessary, to show them that we can deliver outcomes for these vulnerable people, and that it's worth funding. We've demonstrated that. The guys who are running the program have very clearly demonstrated that it is needed and that it is working. It's really frustrating to me that the state government has only committed funding up until the middle of next year. So the way I see it is the longer we continue propping this up is the longer we're allowing the state government to continue not actually addressing the problem as it is. You know, it needs to be funded ongoing. Can I just ask a question of our staff? Like, we have a homeless commitment plan that's coming up now for review. How long does that plan actually last?
Through your chair, it's intended that plan would be a 2-year commitment.
Yep. Okay, cool. So that would be going longer than the state government has committed funding to this program. I didn't know the answer to that question, just so you know. I guess, yeah, I think I'm quite comfortable with the middle ground amendment. I'm not sure again about us organising the round table. I think we organised the Greater Hobart Homelessness Alliance. We've done such a lot in this space, and I'm very mindful of putting additional work onto our staff. I think that we should perhaps write a letter to the state government or suggest heavily to Hobart City Mission and the Salvos that they need to speak to the state government about this and organise that themselves. I think we have done all of this in very good faith. We've given such a lot of our time and resources, of our staff, of our, our actual physical spaces. We've, because we really believe in this and we want to do something, because we really do care about this issue and these people who are living this. But, I don't know if anybody else was contacted by the person who runs the dance studio, but I got a phone call from her last week. And I'll just say for anybody who hasn't actually spoken to her, that she was really distressed about a couple of incidents that have happened to some of the young people who have been attending dance classes because they're actually on in the evenings at the same time as the homeless program. There have been instances where young teenage girls have been chased down the street by people, who have been accessing the homeless space, and the people who run the adults who facilitate the dance classes, the woman who runs it is heavily pregnant, and the other teachers are in their early 20s and don't really feel like they have the ability to sort of manage those really difficult situations. So it is an issue about safety, and it's not just for our youth arc, it's for the other tenants in the area as well. Businesses, what are you going to do? Like, these people are in the city regardless of whether we've got the space open or not. But yeah, to me, I think I'd really support the amendment to the end of May, suggested by Alderman Thomas? Yep. But I don't support the round table. I don't support us facilitating that. I think we do and have done enough, and I think we should recommend that needs to happen. But we've committed such a lot of resources, and I think we are, as I said, supporting the state government, propping them up to not address this problem, and I've had enough of that.
Sorry, so next is Councillor Burnett and then Alderman Briscoe and then Councillor Harvey. Yes.
Yes, very much in favour of any, whether we write to the state government rather than host any of that facilitated discussion. I think it's really up to the state government. So I'd ask the mover of the proponent of the foreshadowed motion to change that.
Yes, Alderman Briscoe.
Look, I think as we know that we have had a significant number of ratepayers, and Councillor Ewan has mentioned one of them who's contacted us about incidents. I think we're in the best position if Council tonight agrees to an extension to May, that in the meantime, that's a couple of months. I think we could do a round table once only, get people talking to each other, get communication going. The police would be aware of the issues. I think it's a really good idea. Secondly, I hope this doesn't come back to us again. So if the council, perhaps I ask the question, if a decision tonight is to get, as Alderman Thomas has suggested, go to the end of May, that's it. That is the final deadline, and it won't come back to council for another decision because irrespective of any communication we get. So could I ask that question? This will be a decision, the final decision. It's up to us. And I'll get nods from the Acting Director, I think. The answer is yes.
Chair, within the recommendation it does say that it's located or until 30th of June at the latest. So if that was changed to May, is at the latest. But we could add in that to not...
But it is a final deadline, yeah. They have to be out by that date. Yeah.
Couldn't the General Manager facilitate that?
Look, I just wanted to corroborate the advice given by the Director, Chair. In fact, I was disappointed it came tonight in the first place, but because we have been giving multiple extensions to try and accommodate the need, but unfortunately it came tonight, and unfortunately you have to make this decision. But if you make the decision tonight, that is an absolute drop dead date, and it won't come back before this council.
Okay. Well, I support that for the sake of getting a good outcome here for everyone. And I also have seen the correspondence from a number of the neighbours and how they're feeling about the situation. So there's a number of people in the area who have serious concerns about the space. So I don't think we should be, I don't think we have sugar-coated the safe overnight program that runs there. So there are issues with it, and hopefully they can be resolved. And I also, I'll say it again, I don't support council organising a roundtable. So I would suggest that be changed, that the council encourage the state government to organise a roundtable. And if it does come back to us, then I'd like that to be a separate part during the council meeting as well. But I will support the extension till the 31st of May as the absolute deadline, and we don't want to see this back here again.
Yes, Lord Mayor and then Councillor Dutta.
Look, I mean, I'd prefer that we actually had a resolution that said until an alternative venue is found. I understand that wouldn't get up around the council chamber here tonight, but I think we have to also acknowledge that this program is actually highly successful in terms of turning street sleepers into 46% of them are going into permanent housing. Like, no city that I'm aware of has got that kind of results, and these people are not going to go away. They're not going to stop worrying dance teachers. They're not going to stop worrying young people. They're not going to stop worrying business people. We've got a homelessness problem, as do all capital cities. We've got a program that's actually turning street sleepers into permanent renters or in social housing, that is actually getting to the core of the problem, and I think we should be bending over backwards to ensure that we don't disrupt this service. I know it's hard for the staff that are very set in their program and the way they've always done things, but I think with being paid rent...
Point of order. I think that that comment should be withdrawn, because I think it is a slight on the staff and the way that they deliver the program.
I don't think that's a point of order myself. It's a different point of view. I've got a different interpretation than you do.
Thank you very much. I do accept that point of order. I think it might actually be misleading when you say that the council staff are very set in their ways. So if you could just please.
Okay, I think the program has been like it's been for many years, and it likes the way that operates. I understand that. I understand that it's easier and better and for that program to operate the way it does. But you know, we have an asset that is we have an emerging problem. We've got a program that's challenged, and I don't think that us saying, you know, it's not our problem is going to fix the problem for our ratepayers, our residents, our business people. I think the unfortunate reality is that it's going to continue. It might be in a different part of the city. It might be different dance teachers, different children, different business people, but you know, we've got a program that is turning street sleepers into renters, and that is what we need to support if we can. So I probably will support the amendment, but I think I would probably have preferred the something that said until they find a space. I hope they get the space tonight. That is my hope, because I don't think there is, you know, there's obviously not a good feeling between the two operators of the programs, and that's not sustainable. But that's a shame, but it's not sustainable. Thanks.
Yes, Councillor Duttor and then Councillor Coates.
Thank you. I just have a question. With regards to this round table meeting, getting people together, different stakeholders, what will it cost, and how burdensome is it going to be on the staff?
Through you, Chair, the cost would be staff time. So we could host the roundtable in a City of Hobart venue that would not have a cost to it. It would be, the state government will be the challenge for us, but I do think the stakeholders that we've engaged with that are part of the report will be happy for a roundtable to occur. So I can't see too many issues with hosting that, apart from the state government's role in that roundtable.
Thank you, Chair. Now, I take the point that's been made that we take the roundtable away, but I am of the view, you know, we need to provide leadership in this particular area. You know, we've talked about leadership many times, and I think if we can, in realizing the cohort of people, and if the government doesn't come into the party, then it will be a negative, image on them that they are not wanting to be involved. So therefore, you know, I would leave it as it is and test the members as to which way they want to go.
Thank you very much, Councillor Duttor. So it was Councillor Coates and then Alderman Zuko.
Thank you, Chair. Look, I'll be very brief. I think ultimately, in some ways, I think Hobart City Mission have been wildly successful, but you know, they've had $20 million and they haven't sort of found a permanent home, if you like, for their program. And look, you know, they came to us, I think, in good faith, with an issue, with a concern. We were in a position where we were able to help them. We've done the right thing. I think listening to the discussion tonight, I think we've come to a good compromise, but my feedback, and it's been said by others, and I would reiterate that, is, and I hope that Hobart City Mission listen to this, is that, you know, unfortunately, Council is not in a position to provide $20 million to fund homeless. We're also not in a position to permanently provide a home for the program to be run out of, and although with all the goodwill of everyone around this table to try and find a solution, you know, the solution probably won't be found around this table. And so I think that May date needs to be a very firm one, and that message, I think, is probably being relayed, and I'm just adding to it. But you know, for all the reasons that have been mentioned, I applaud them. They've been wildly successful. I think there's a reason why, in reading this report, the government has funded it to the extent they have. They've funded it for over 2 years, which is great. And no doubt, when it comes up in June 2022, they'll go through the budget submission process and they can prove that it was successful and they'll get funded again. So look, I think I wish them every success in finding a new home. In the meantime, I'm glad that we're in a position where we can help them, and I'll be supporting Councillor Dutta's motion. And when it comes up full council, I should say. Look, I just hope that this hopefully can come to a resolution before the 31st of May.
Thank you very much. So I'll have just a final word for...
Oh, this is new information. I'm not going over it. No,
okay.
New information.
And then after that, I'll put the vote
Yeah,
next.
there's been a number of comments regarding the state government being a player in this, insofar as the motion is put by Alderman Thomas that if the state government don't come to the round table, it doesn't occur. So that way there it puts a pressure on the state government to participate and be part of it. So unless the state government partake in the round table discussion and be part of it, it doesn't happen. So that will resolve any concerns anyone has about us being the only player on the table. Okay?
Thank you very much. I think it's been a very fruitful discussion, and now I'll just put the motion. So it is as amended?
Is
or?
that
One of these, yeah.
Councillor Dutta's motion or Councillor
No,
Thomas?
Councillor Harvey has to withdraw his first motion.
I never had a chance to put it. Yeah. I said at the appropriate moment I would move it,
So what have we got on
but I haven't moved it.
So to my understanding, and please correct me if I'm wrong, it's point number 2, but it's amended to May 31st at the latest, and then after that a final sentence, which is this is the final deadline. Then point number 3 becomes point number 2, which is the General Manager be authorised to finalise the terms and conditions of the licence agreement if an extension is approved. And then point number 3, with regards to the round table, that we write to the ministers and the relevant stakeholders in collaboration with council officers. So that's three points within the recommendation. Is that correct?
And that the state government has to agree to participate. Are you comfortable with that, all, Councillor Dutta? Thank you. For it to happen, yeah.
Yeah, committee members okay with what the recommendation is? So we'll put that to the vote. Any dissent on that particular item? No? Very good. Thank you very much.